So hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. So today what I would like us to do would be to try to build a desktop application in Rust. And this is of course going to be a sequel of the series we have running for a while now, which is trying to more or less show you how you can actually start development with Rust. And we started off by of course building like a fully functional like production grade backend application. And after that, we've also gone ahead to build so much more applications, more or less trying to show you, of course, like with Rust, there are no limits as to what you can actually build. And of course, Rust have actually evolved. That's it goes of course beyond working with it, say on the back end. You can of course use it for systems development. There are so many new places of course Rust can now be used with a lot more that's promises that of course it brings to the table. And one of those of course is also like desktop applications. And in this tutorial I would like us to really explore what we can do with that. So with Rust of course, I'm assuming you already know we have a lot of advantages that it brings with it. So you can more or less, of course, think of it as a systems programming language, which focuses on safety, performance, and concurrency. And most people are already proposing it to be like a modern alternative to C or C++ because of its more memory safety offering, without the need for garbage collector and all that. And I'm guessing you already know all of this. The debate is huge. But anyways, I want us to focus on what we want to do today, and to for us to do that, of course, I would like to introduce you to a new crate called Tauri. And I'm probably just gonna bring over 1 second. I'm gonna bring this over to this screen so you can actually see. So this is Tori. So this really all promises more or less to offer like a secure cross-platform capabilities of building modern apps. And if you look here, it's more or less, I would say, from framework agnostic, because independent of the framework you already have, or you're known, or you're familiar with, let's say, working in the front end. It could be JavaScript based, could be React, Angular, whatever the case might be, or it can also be Rust based, with frameworks like Vue and and the rest of them. So with Story, you have the option of actually itself making makes it actually a lot easier to use any of these frameworks to build like a really fully functional cross-platform desktop application in Rust. And that's really what I would like us to, of course, explore today. So Tori offers to be, or promises to be, a framework for building lightweight and secure desktop applications using the web technologies you're already familiar with: HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And so it leverages the power of Rust and WebView to create cross-platform applications that can run on Windows, macOS, and Linux. And it also has a plan in the future to also support um, mobile. So that's also why you see here Android and iOS. But at this point, at the point that this making video, I don't think this is yet possible, but this is also planned. So that's really one cool thing about it. So, but for this tutorial, maybe I just close this part so we can just focus again. So in this tutorial, maybe I'm just going to create a simple README, another folder. I want to create a file, readme.md. So I'm gonna call this our ROS desktop app, and our tech stack is gonna be pretty straightforward. So for so I'm gonna go the JavaScript route, and what it means is that I'm going to assume that you are already familiar with, say, building front-end applications, which React, Angular, Vue, doesn't really matter. But for our own case, I'm just going to go ahead and use solid.js because I just love it. And of course, then we need Tauri. So we would use solid to more or less kind of like help us build like a typical front-end application. And under the hood, then we'll now use Tauri to, of course, manage the connectivity. And Tauri is also going to offer us some form of a back end. And what it means is that we can actually like delegate like some more compute intensive computations in our app. Could be IO base intensive IO reads, could be some like crazy heavy file manipulations or whatever, because of course we know JavaScript is single threaded, so we can actually delegate these tasks back to our Rust backend, which is like very well multi-threaded, and we can utilize Rust to maybe process some of these computational intensive aspects of our app. Can delegate all of this to Rust, and it will take care of this for us. So that's really the interesting aspect of having this combination. So I'm currently on Windows, and for me to efficiently work on Windows, I would need to have Microsoft C++ build tools already installed, and this is really the case. I have Rust installed. I also have the Tauri binary installed, of course, the CLI tool, and I am quite ready to go. So without further ado, we'll just jump right in and actually start writing some code. So to initialize a project, we need the create Tauri app installed locally. And this is, you can actually think of this as the create a React app you have for initializing a new React app. And we have the option of just having the binary dumped into our bash. We can use this, call this from our PowerShell. In the case of, say, we're working from Windows, we can actually use npm or yarn or whatever the case might be. And we can also do this in Rust. But for this tutorial, I'm just going to keep it easy, and I'm going to use npm. So again, I'm just going to assume you have this already installed. If you don't, just go ahead and install this. And if you already don't and you just have cargo, it's also pretty straightforward. All you have to do is come down here and say cargo create story app. Okay, that's as simple as that. But to use npm, all I need to do is I come down here and say npm create. I can say story app, and I have to, of course, tag this latest. So I say latest. And now this would, of course, ask me a couple of questions regarding what needs to happen. So within this project, it would, of course, need to install this create Tauri app dependencies. I'm just going to go ahead and say yes. And after that, it's just going to, the next thing would be to ask me the name of the project, as you can see over here. And I'm just going to maybe call this Rust desktop app. I don't know, something like this. Identifier, this is fine for me. I'm going to do this in TypeScript. As you can see here, you can do this in Rust and then manage this with Cargo. You also have the option to work with .NET, but I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to work with TypeScript. I'm going to work with npm. And then I can scroll down here. As you can see, I have a lot of options. I can work with Vue, with Svelte, with React, Solid, Angular, P-React, but now I'm going to do this with Solid and, of course, TypeScript. So this is just going to go ahead and set up the app for me. But one thing you can already see is that I have this folder created up here. And because this is more or less, you would say run this and then it would create the new project for you, of course, as a folder. But we have a folder already created down here. And I'm just gonna maybe copy the content of this guy. I'm gonna copy this, come back into this one down here and paste it, and then I can just delete this one, and then I can now copy everything here. So I copy all of this, let me see, copy all of this and then bring it to the root, and now I can just go ahead and delete this one. And that's really all we have to do to set things up. But the interesting thing, of course, you need to see is that if you look here, this looks like a simple, if you're familiar with working with Solid, which is, trust me, in no way so different from React. You would see like the basic setup you get. We have our index HTML. If we look in here, we should also have our roots, ID with ID of roots, where basically all our app, of course, will be embedded in here. We have a package JSON, tsconfig, because I'm working with TypeScript and all that. And in fact, at this point, I can already start my Solid app. So I can actually say npm starts. I think I need to say run. I think run starts. No, let me no, of course I need to, install everything first. And let me look at my scripts. Here should be npm start. So, but first I need to install the packages, the dependencies, and that's what's happening right now. So I'm gonna give that a couple of seconds to complete, and then we can proceed. So the install is done, and now I'm just gonna clear this and say npm start. And again, like I told you, it's a simple Solid app. This is up. And if I click this, it should open this on my browser. And I can also bring this over here to show you. So this is, you see, it's running here, and that's also of course the ports you see down here running. So a typical solid app. But of course, this is not how I would want to proceed with this, because again, we are building a desktop app, not really like a web app. So in that case, what it means is that I would be working more or less with Tauri, because Tauri would be like handling the packaging and everything for us, encapsulating the whole logic into our installable, our executable, which can of course be on any operating system, be it Windows, Linux, Mac, doesn't really matter. And but the point is that we would now have to do this with Tori, and then it's not going to just be a web app, but now everything will run within on this enclosed space, more or less. And to see the app, I'm just going to shut this down, and now I can say npm run Tori dev. And what is wrong? Let me see. No such file. 1 second. So I think I actually made a mistake. So it should be npm. So let's do that one more time and see. And now this should be able to, of course, build our app. I can actually, if you look here, you would see two source files. So this first one, of course, would house all ours. You can already imagine our normal regular front-end app. And then down here where you see source story, this is where our Rust app is going to live. And then like usual, we can always go into this targets and expand. We have our debug, and inside debug, in the end, when the build is complete, we'll have a new folder that's going to contain our binaries. And in the end, of course, we're going to get an MSI and an executable in the end that's going to be compiled for us, because for me, in this case, I'm working on Windows. So that's why I would get those files. But let's just give that a couple of seconds or minutes to install, and then we can proceed. I'll show you what's is up next. So now the compilation is done, and the app is actually, it opened in a different window. I'm just going to bring it over. And this also, if you remember, this was also what we saw when I took you to the web page. Quite pretty straightforward. And for now, there is just one functionality that it has, where I can simply provide a name and say greet, and then it says something like this. So, but the interesting thing now is this is not a web app per se. This is more or less a completely standalone desktop app, actually, running locally on my browser. Sorry, running locally as a standalone app in my PC. And that's actually the interesting thing. So I'm just gonna maybe close this up, and because I would like to show you a little bit of how this whole thing works. So again, like I showed you, within the source is where everything relating to how we would normally build a web app would live. And this could, again, independent on the framework, this is how you could have this setup. And then, but within the source story, you now have the option of actually coming in here, and we can look into the main file, for example, or let's look into the lib, and then we see this function called greet. So it's of course annotated with this command trait from Tori, and basically it's like a regular function, as you can see here, that takes a string and then returns this. That's really all it does. And then the quite important thing, more or less, is the name, because now if we go over to the front end to see how this is actually being consumed, if I come over here, I'm gonna collapse this a little bit. You can actually see there is this package in TypeScript in this case that provides this invoke function, and with this invoke function, we can now, this would now be our front end actually talking to the back end. So it does this by, of course, referencing the name of the function, in this case greet. Maybe open this also on the side, so we see how everything is actually working. And so here it is. So basically, this is the function, is called greet. And now from here, we simply invoke this greet and then pass the arguments here, as you can see, as a dictionary. Again, the name is also what this function is expecting, an argument called name. And now we are simply providing that this way. And then we invoke this function asynchronously. We listen to the response. When the response returns, we append more or less add this here because of course the way solid is set up, when this is completed, this would be of course used to now update this argument. Now this argument is now what will now be rendered somewhere down here as the name. Pretty straightforward. So this is really how it is set up right now. Again, I am not gonna really focus on building the front end basically, but I'll really focus more on the back end to show you how we can actually set things up. We're gonna talk a little bit about menu, how we can set up the menu, how we can listen to events, how we can have access to our local directories, things like if we wanna maybe have access to the download folder, the documents folder, video, wherever, and also the path where the app would be installed locally when we install this, in case for scenarios whereby we would want to of course store additional data in that location. Could be like a simple database file. So I will also show you how we can handle errors, also as we would always like to do, define our own custom errors and handle them as well. I'll also show you how we can have our app manage a state. So this could come handy in cases where we have some I don't know, information we would like to store on say the Tauri, the Rust part of things, and now have our app reference this, maybe when the commands come in from the UI to our Rust backend and much more. These are the core functionalities I would like to show you because again, I don't want to teach you how to build front-end app because I am assuming you already know how to do this, and also because this is not like a front-end tutorial more or less. So that's why I would like us to focus on the Rust aspect of things. So I'm just gonna close all of this up, and then we can talk a little bit about this file, and then I can now show you how you can start making additions and to cover all these other topics we've already mentioned. So let's proceed. And maybe before we do that, I would like to also show you one thing. So let's just assume we are done building our desktop app. I would like to actually bundle this and see what we get in the end. It's also pretty straightforward. All we have to do is npm run Tauri, and let's say build. So this should now go out and actually build our standalone installable binaries for us, and of course in this case for Windows because I'm currently on Windows, and that should of course build for release. So now instead of debug we should now be getting another one that's going to be for release. So I'm just going to pause for a while and let it build, as you can already see it's over here, but I'm just going to give it a couple of minutes to complete, and then I'll come back and show you where you can actually find the binaries. So now that the build is complete, I'm just gonna maybe open this up a little bit, and then you can also see where those are installed or stored rather. So inside the target release, we have bundle, MSI, and NSIS. So we can also quickly go there. So inside here, we go to bundle, and then we have those two folders. So inside here, we'll have our MSIS file, MSI file rather, which we can easily install on our Windows. And of course, down here, we would have the same file. This will also be our executable. So those are really where we get our binaries after we've compiled. Of course, you also have the option to optimize the build on the side of Rust. We already covered something like that in the past. So if you haven't, I'm also going to leave a link so you can see how you could optimize your production builds of your Rust applications. So I'm just going to close all of this up and then come down in here, and now we can actually I can start to show you how things work, and then we can maybe start writing some code. So I'm currently running Tauri 2.0, and 2.0 already supports or has like a better phase. More or less, I'm not quite sure if it is fully functional, but I think there is already like a better test phase for developments for mobile, could be iOS and Android. And but that's also not something I've personally tested out, but maybe in the future I would. But I want to give you a quick tour of the files we have in here so we can maybe know how we can actually start making our contributions. Of course, you're already familiar with the build RS. And the important thing I want to show you is, of course, this TauriConf.json. So this basically is where you specify some configurations and platforms and all that regarding the app you're building. And so again, I would provide a link to what could go into this config file. and then you can maybe take your time, go through it, and then see what's applied or what applies to you depending on the platform you're targeting. And you also have the option of writing these config names to be specific to a certain platform, something like Windows tauri.conf.json or something similar like that. And but again, I'm just going to provide a link to documentation so you'd feel free to check it out. But the interesting thing is you really probably would don't even need to know Rust, in my opinion. You could actually have everything work on the front end as it would, maybe make external um, um, API requests to some external server somewhere, doesn't really matter. But the interesting thing that you can only just work from the CLI, use Rust, set everything up, and go about working with your React or whatever the case might be. And then in the end, you already have like a fully functioning desktop app, um, as well as a mobile app. That's really quite interesting. But anyways, I'm just gonna collapse this and I'm gonna come over here to start showing you some things. So the first thing I would like to show you would be our state. I want to show you how we can manage a state, and it should be pretty straightforward. I'm going to do that, of course, with a struct. So I'm going to come here and define the struct, and I'm probably going to call this app state. And for this, I'm gonna really keep it simple. Maybe I want to add a name. So this name is gonna be I don't know, a string. And maybe down here I have, or maybe I don't even need to make all of this public. So I can come down here, have something called license, something like this. I think that's already more than enough. There's no need to add so much information. And the next thing I'll probably want to do here is to simply just add the default thread. I'm just going to add default. And because what I want to do now is to show you how we can actually manage state. It's really, really, really quite straightforward. Okay, so now that we have this defined, what I would like to do would be maybe I just come down here. Let me maybe bring this down, and I come up here and I bring in std sync, and I bring in mutex. And because I would like to, of course, wrap our state with a mutex so that our different commands would probably be able to update it, just to make it interesting a little bit. Okay, and then if you see the setup in our run file, after we set up, of course, Tauri, there is an option to, of course, attach plugins, and there is also like quite detailed documentation of how to write your own plugin if that's something you would want to do. But the interesting thing happens on line 21 where you have invoke handler. This is where we have to append all the commands we've defined. So if you have another command here, maybe I don't know, I'm just going to duplicate this and say goodbye, something like this. If I can type and I say good bye, I don't know, this person, and I say I don't know, something like see you next time, whatever. And now we have a new command, and with this new command, all I have to do is to just come here and provide this here. The only interesting thing I will need to let you know is that we cannot call this function more than once. So that's why all the handle commands you define would have to come in here and be provided as um as a slice. So all of them would now live in here. And of course, as you can already see, we can already call this from our front end. So, but anyways, with these states that we've defined here, if we want to be able to, of course, have this available to our commands, what I can simply do is after plugin, I can come down here and call the setup method. My IntelliSense is taking its time, and I call the setup method, and I would oh, what did I do? And I'll of course have access to the app. So with this app, what I can now do actually is to maybe come down here and now decide what I want to do with this. One of the things I might want to do with this, of course, in the end, um, I would of course need to return okay. because of the return type of our function, so for everything to go well. But anyways, in here I have the option of actually calling app.manage on my IntelliSense. It's really lagging behind, and I call app.manage, and now I have the option of actually providing my states, whatever variable, whatever the case might be. And now I, of course, because I want to run this with a mutex, and I can say mutex.new, and then in here I can now provide my app state. So I can call app state on what is going on. So I say app state, and I can of course call the default function. And now I can just close this up. And now our commands we have down here, we now have a way of actually providing them with this state file, sorry, with this state variable, and then they can of course go ahead and modify them. It's actually that's straightforward. So, but as you can already be imagining, within our commands, we also have a quite interesting way to have access to this. So for example, this greet command, if we want to have access to this additional state variable that we just defined, we have to provide that in here in the command. But here I'm just going to make it the first thing that actually comes in into this command. So state is going to be of type state, which should come from Tauri. And then in here, I provide a lifetime variable. And of course, now I provide the type. Now this should be a mutex wrapping around my app state like this. And, and that's really all the change we have to do. So now within this command, one simple thing we can actually now do is I can say, maybe shadow the first one by saying let state equal to state.log, and I unwrap as well as a way of lazily handling my error. And now at this point, I can actually maybe update this, for example, and I can say maybe state.name. I can now set this to this name, the one that we actually got from the user, something like this. And to match the definition, I can simply just do state.toString like this. And that should be able to update. Of course, this has to be mutable, so I say mute, and now everything should be fine. And then we also have the option of maybe we can even maybe down here now I can also probably do this, whatever. And maybe what I can also do is to just come down here and now just maybe print the new value we have. So I can maybe state.name. Oh, sorry, I have to use quotes in where here, and I say the new name is something like this, and then I provide this out here, state.name, whatever, and I close this up. So that's really one way to have this state file sorry, this state variable, I keep calling it file, available to all our commands, and we get to maybe modify them, consume the data in there, whichever we want to do it. And again, also have the option, of course, of updating them however we want. So that's one way we can actually have this. And but mostly what people do is to come in here and actually create a folder called command. And maybe in here I create a file. I'm just going to call this mod.rs. And I can just come in here and I don't know, copy everything, see what I need and what I don't need. And of course, maybe in here first, I can say mod cmd, and I come back in here, and now I need to bring this inside, say app states like this, and then of course I don't need this anymore, I only need the states. And of course maybe I make these functions public, so let me update that, so pub, and this one as well, I'll make this pub. Okay, and now we go back to what are we missing? I think we're missing some traits imports. Okay, now I think no, I think we have duplicates. Yes, it's fine. So I'm just gonna go back to in here and now maybe remove these ones. And so this other one, we should no longer have that error again. And now up here, we can now simply get this from our command um, module. So command like this. And so most time this is what people mostly do. Like they have the option of now separating, of course, their commands. Then so you have the option to now come in here, define all the commands you have, and then if there are additional attributes, whatever about your app, you also get to, of course, come here and define those. Anyways, let's proceed. Again, I'm going to remove this here because this is no longer required. And maybe to test things out, I can also maybe open the terminal and run npm run Tauri dev to actually see what we have, and give that a couple of seconds or maybe minutes, I'm not sure, for things to build. And let's see. So now the build is complete, and then this opened in a new window, and now we can actually test this as something. It's probably going to say Tony and then greet, and then it says hello Tony, because again this is coming from the back. And then but we also see that's logged here on the terminal, and then I can also change this, and of course we also see it updates it in the state. So that's really pretty straightforward, nothing so much. And of course I'm just going to leave this running now, because we have, when we make changes, this will of course automatically update, so we get like a fresh reload. So I'm just going to remove this because I don't want to have code lying around which I don't really need. But the thing is that when you update something on the Rust path of things, it will actually close the app. As you can see down here, it's currently closed. It will have to rebuild the app and then solve this one more time. So this is some of the things that personally I just would like to completely shut it off and just do what I'm doing. And when I'm done testing, and I can spin it up again. It's only maybe when I have to make changes on the front end aspect of things that I actually leave it running, because it's not going to rebuild and reserve the app itself. It's just going to re-render more or less the UI part, which is going to be running within the desktop app. And of course, it will not need to restart the app itself. But anyways, everything should still be working fine now, as usual. So everything is cool. So I'm just going to close this for now and close this terminal, so we have actually room to work. And so the next thing I would like us to talk about would be our menu. To take care of our menu, again, I'm just going to come in here, create a new folder rather, and I call this menu. And inside of menu, I'm also going to create a file mod rs. And of course, also bring that in here. So mod menu. Okay, and then let's come back in here. My PC is really quite slow today. I have no idea why, but that's also totally fine. So down here, I would like to create a new function, and I can call this maybe get menu. And this is where I would like to define some things I would like my app to have in terms of menu, and then this should return a menu item for me in the end. So I bring that in. Um, okay, what did I do? Okay, so now I like to define just very simple. Maybe I'll start by just defining a simple menu, and then we can see how things work. So let's imagine, for example, that I want to have the option of, say, quit from our app without having just to close the click on the close button. I can create a menu here to help me do that. So I can create a new menu item here called quit, and this quit is going to be of type custom menu. So let's try to create a menu, and I am still trying. I think I'm still trying to use the version 1 of the API, but I think this is no longer possible in the new version. So here I have to use menu item, and then so I can simply call the with ID method, and then I provide some ID. But of course, to do this, I will need the app handle. So I can call this app handle. So this should be of type app handle. And then here will be my app handle actually. And then I have to give this an ID. So maybe I'll just call this quit, for example. And this is going to be the ID. And the actual tests, I would like this to show something like this, quit. So maybe in that case, I'm gonna give this the small letter Q, and then enabled, I'm gonna set this to true, and for accelerator, I'm gonna set this to none, and this is gonna be of type think string. I'm gonna define it as this, and of course, I'm gonna handle the error unwrap. And now I have, oh, this keeps popping up, a menu item. And of course, I need to pass this by reference. So that's all I need to do to fix this error. Okay, now so I have my quit, and I'm just maybe going to duplicate this several times to create another one. I'm going to maybe call this one close. I don't know, I'm just giving them names, doesn't really matter. But the interesting thing is I would like to show you how you can set up these things. So I have close. And now what I would like to do now is to group these menus together. So I can maybe define one and call a sub menu, for example. And this would be of type sub menu. And I can say I can call the new method. And of course, again, I pass the app handle. And then the tests, maybe I call this file. And enabled, of course, would be true. And there's going to be some error to handle, and then I handle the error like this. And then let's just say that's all the menu I actually wanted to add. Now I can create my new menu, and I can say menu.new, and again I pass my app handle, and now I can add I should be able to call the sub menu function. So I should be able to say sub main. I think this is no longer the case. Let's say with items. How is it called? Let me see. Okay, so actually I have to. This actually is version API version 1. So I'm still adjusting to the version 2. It's also totally fine. So I have to call the menu dot with sorry with items like this. And again, I provide my app handle. And then down here, of course, now I actually get to provide my submenus as a list. And to do that, I have to pass this as a slice. So all I have to do is do something like this. And I pass submenu. And now, of course, this would give me a result. And I would, of course, need to unwrap this to be able to. So let me see the result type we get back. So let's menu equal to this. And now sorry, I'm going to change our return type to match this, of course. So this would now be something like this. And in here, I'm going to pass, of course, the event loop message like this. And it does the case. I'm just going to remove these parts and just return the whole thing. And that should be able to fix this error for us. So over here, we actually do not need to provide the generic. So I'm just gonna get rid of this, and this should actually be fine. And actually, maybe of course I remove this imports. But what I can already do is, I don't think this makes sense this way. I'm going to provide this more or less as a reference because at the end, this is actually not going to modify this anyways. And then I remove all this borrow here, and this should be totally fine. So now what we can do is, of course, go ahead and try to hook this up with our main app. But if you notice right now, we have this quit and close defined, but we actually not really using them because sometimes I still find myself trying to use the version 1 of the API, and then I have to call myself again back to order and then try to use the version 2. So to use that again is going to be similar to what we did here for our menu. So here I'm going to define a sub menu, and again, just like we did before, and I can say sub menu. And now I say with, I call it with items, function, and then of course I passed my manager. Again, I'm doing exactly what we did over there. So I have the manager, and then the text. Again, I'm going to name this file, and enabled would be true. And then items, again, I'm going to pass like we did before. So I'm going to pass quit and close. And of course, I handle my error like this. And I'm just going to get rid of this one. We don't need this anymore. And now this is passed like this. So what it means that this menu now would, of course, have this sub menu that we just defined here. If you want to define more, again, I'm just probably just going to copy all of this, come down here, and then maybe up here, I add a comment. Up here, maybe I say something like license information, I don't know, whatever. And now here we can say something like view. So this is how you could view your current license, for example. So I'm going to change this like this, and then I would have this one here for like maybe renew. I don't know, updates. Let's see, updates, and then I change, of course, update the test here again to say updates, and then again quite similar to what we did here. So here I'm going to just now call this license, and then here I'll provide view and of course updates. And of course, as you can already imagine, I'm going to come here again and add this one. So license like this. So that's actually how you can add as many of these license, sorry, the sub menus you would need to add to your when you're defining your menu. And then we can of course return a menu item like this. So now what we can now do is just go back to our main app and try to hook all this up. So I'm just gonna come over to our main file, and then in here, maybe of course before we invoke our handlers, I'm gonna come here and add a menu item. So I say menu, common IntelliSense, and now I need of course a reference to my app because I need this to be able to invoke that function. So I can say let's menu. So this is going to be the menu I'm trying to create, and then I use my menu module to call my get menu, and then of course I pass the handler like this. And now once I have access to my menu, I simply actually return it. So I return my menu like this. And that's actually all I need to do to append this newly created menu. So now we just give it a couple of seconds or minutes to actually compile, and then we look to the app we have to actually see what we have in the end. So of course the compilation is complete, and then I bring this over here, and now you can see what we have. So we had file, and I think, oh, we made a mistake. So again, that's also fine. We can fix this. So this was called file, and this was also called file. So we can call this license, and then rebuild this again. So we are done compiling again, and now I can open this one more time. And now you actually see the two menus we added. So we have file, and we now have, of course, license. So, but one thing you can notice is that when we click this, nothing really happens. So we have the menu attached, but it doesn't really do anything. Of course, I can also make it big, last on full screen and everything. And so, but right now, I'm just gonna close this, and then the next thing I would like to do, of course, is to show you how we can of course attach like what you would normally traditionally refer to as callbacks to all these menu items to have them respond to certain invoked commands, as of course coming from our app. So that's the next thing we're going to do right now. So to handle the events, I'm gonna come here and create a new function. Just for demo purposes, I'm just gonna call this handle menu, oh come on, events. Of course is a public function, so not just public, and it's going to be quite similar to what we have above, but it's going to take two things. So it's going to of course take our app handle, which is going to be exactly what we have up there, and it's going to take an additional thing called event, and that event is going to be of type menu event. And so for now, I would just like to do two things. I would just like to handle scenarios where we click the quit button or where we click the close button. And I'm just going to really keep it that simple. So what I would want to do here is more or less look at the ID of the event coming in. So of course, if you look here, you see that all the menu items we've defined all have an ID. So we'll try to, of course, reference the events based on this ID. So that's also what I'm going to do here. So I can say event.id, and I'm using this as ref. I'll try to match this event ID. So again, I'm going, like I said, I'm going to handle scenario where we want to quit the app. So when this is the ID of the event that's coming in, all I need to do here is call my app handle, and I can say exit, and I can provide an exit code. I'm just going to keep it at 0. And again, so when the ID of the event is closed, maybe what I can do is actually just hide our menu. So I can say hide menu, call the hide menu function, and handle my error like this. And for every other case, I'm just gonna maybe print the user, the ID of the event. And for now, I'm not handling it. So I can just come here and say event.id. No, please. Event.id, and that's really all I would be doing for now. So this is of course used, and this is, so now I can come over here to where we actually defined our menu. So I defined our menu at this point, so I can really come down here, and because we now have as a reference our app handle, I can simply call it here app dot common IntelliSense or menu event. And then this menu event is going to give me actually 2 arguments. So again, I'm going to define the closure. And then here, I'm going to, of course, define I'm just going to maybe call this handle and event like this. And I have access to these 2 events, as you can see. So, and now I can simply call the function we just created, we just handle events. I provide the handle and of course, the events, and really that's all we need to do to register those. And let me see, we seem to have some error, doesn't implement. I'm just gonna do it like this, so we're able to of course say this. So but that's all we need to do to of course append events, or more or less, if you like, callbacks to those menu events as they come in. And so now let me expand this. Okay, now our app is of course rebuilding. When it's done rebuilding, I will try to test the app, and then we see if this actually behaves the way we would expect it to. So our app is done building, and then I bring it over to this screen. And now you can see, of course, we had this menu created before, but right now we only implemented callbacks to these 2. And maybe I try the second one first, because we said when we click the close, which is this one, we simply just hide the menu. So let's see. So that actually just hides the menu. Of course, now we don't have a way of bringing back the menu we just hid. So right now, I really don't have a way of bringing back the menu. So I'm just going to let it rebuild. It shouldn't actually take time because we didn't actually make any new changes. And so let's see. So it's rebuilt one more time. I can open this again and bring this over here. So now we try to test the quit one. We click it, and of course it should just exit the app. So that's really quite simple and straightforward way we can handle create our menus, and then of course provide and add callbacks to those menu items. And so the way I would think of it, of course, that this would be more or less core menu um, functionalities that has to do with the app itself, or managing like core aspects of the app, like you have like closing, creating if your app has to create a new file or whatever, like those core aspects of the app. But if your app itself, like I'm now talking about the front end aspect of it, has some menu items, this does not need to come back to Rust. This can, of course, you can think of it as your UI, your front end. It should still be okay running within, itself. And then the menu items that we have created here would be just specific and unique to our app itself. That's the way I would, of course, group the menu items more or less. So the last thing I might want to show you, of course, would be if I'm just going to just do something here, it doesn't really matter. So if we wanted to implement our own kind of error, we can, of course, do it like we normally would with an enum. So I'm going to define my enum like this. So this should characterize my error. and now I give it some attributes. Let's say I'm just gonna add just one called unknown error. So this is the only error that our enum implements. And all I need to do, of course, maybe I can just add some traits, depending on what I want to do. Maybe I need debug, but of course I need to implement error. But of course, the interesting thing that I need to do would be now to, of course, decide how I want to handle this error. So in my own case, I can make this, of course, probably come from this error, for example. If that's one thing you would want to do, that's how I would normally do this, of course. But the interesting thing would be that we need to implement again, if that's the route we want to go, we'd have to implement serialize for that error. So if I'm going the route of using this error, all I need to, of course, is to add that thread here, and that thread, of course, will come from this error, and then I have to just implement serialize for it. Okay, so but apart from that, the way we've implemented our custom errors until now works perfectly well here. No new thing actually needs to. There's nothing so special that needs to happen here actually. And so, but other than that, I think working with Tori is a quite interesting journey for me. I've been exploring it like for the last few weeks, and now I'm also trying to actually use it to build like an app, a desktop app, and also having to, of course, migrate a project I'm working on completely to Tauri, of course, giving me the functionality of you working with Rust, like it as a backend of my desktop app, and again having again a front end aspect to it. And one cool thing also that Tauri offers is that this concept of plugins, which is also something I can quickly just show you just to bring you it to your attention. So if you look over here, for example, you will see this long list of plugins. And in here, you can already see, because most now, like I told you, with this new release, it's now possible to build apps for Android and iOS, basically for mobile platforms. So now there is this concept of plugins. It's been there anyways, but I think it's actually now one way of bringing in new features, pay while considering the mobile landscape. So if you look here, you see all of these plugins now, like auto start. Also, here you can also see supported platforms. Have this barcode scanner and everything. You have these file systems, which for me is quite interesting. Have this HTTP client, have localhost, of course, when you're doing your development. Again, always pay attention to these supported platforms. You have NFC, which you probably are already aware if you use things like Google Pay or Apple Pay. So there is active development on Tauri from my understanding. But the interesting plugins for me it would be things like, say, this file system or this SQL. It's mostly, of course, supported on all the platforms except for iOS. Then you also have Store and a lot more. Others are also, of course, in continuous development. Again, there is WebSockets, and but again, like I said, apart from all of this being implemented, you also have the option of implementing your own plugins to fit the specific features you are going for. So there's really a lot going on here, a lot to do. Also, for me, it's also like an exploration journey, more or less. But the cool thing now is that you have the option of bringing, say, a front end you have already written in any JavaScript framework of your choice, or even a Rust framework like you have we have Leptos, and the rest. You now have the option of bringing those, and with Tori, you can actually convert those to desktop apps for different platforms, and interestingly also for mobile apps. I think that's really quite interesting. That's also why I'm exploring this, and really indulge you to also do same. Anyway, guys, this is really what I wanted to show. This was more or less like an insightful video, so we didn't actually do so much of programming, but it was more like giving you like this information just so you have it, so you can think of this tutorial as an info service. But that will be all for now, guys, and we'll see each other next time. Again, if you're new, please go ahead, subscribe, and ask your questions, make your suggestions. I will quickly and always get back to you. And yeah, until we see each other next time, have a lovely evening, guys. Thank you so much.